Hello and welcome to Best Way International's presentation of a quick look at the changes in Incoterms 2020. Incoterms is copyrighted by the International Chamber of Commerce. This presentation contains interpretations only. Please consult the copyrighted version for the actual language. Now that that's out of the way, my name is Jay Devers. I will be your presenter today. My company is Best Way International. We are an international freight forwarder and United States customs broker based in Kansas City, Missouri. We are also business partners with Hellman Worldwide Logistics, a global freight forwarder. Just a brief bit about us. We pride ourselves on our local knowledge and expertise. Our company, as I mentioned, was founded in 1988. In 2017, we were awarded the President's E Award for export service. We have a very experienced team that is quite familiar with specialized cargo, licensed, perishable, hazardous, and also unusual trading terms. What we offer our clients is access to significant worldwide air and ocean networks, really the best of both worlds. Access to global networks, local care and attention, really a better experience through friendly service and local hands. So today we're here to talk about Incoterms. So let's go through real quick what we're going to hit on and what we're going to avoid. What we'll cover today is a quick introduction to Incoterms. The next thing is what I think most of you are here for, which is the changes in the 2020 edition. And we'll have a tip or two for successful application of the 7 any mode terms. Because this is a brief presentation, we will avoid a detailed history of Incoterms and the point-by-point responsibility definitions. We have other suggestions and best practices that time won't allow us to talk about in this presentation, and we'll also avoid the 4 ocean-only trading terms. So what are Incoterms rules? It's a short version of international commercial terminology, and it's been around for a long time. The current iteration of Incoterms is 11 different terms of shipment and delivery. These terms are endorsed and managed by 130 international chambers of commerce committees and translated into 27 different languages. Where you want to see Incoterms appear is on commercial transaction documents, specifically pro forma invoices, otherwise known as quotes, purchase orders, and commercial invoices. What we're doing here is we're dividing the risks, responsibilities of each party to an international transaction. What you'll hear us say to our clients is a command of Incoterms is very, very important to customer satisfaction. And we'll talk about that here just in a second. Very important, Incoterms is always 3 letters followed by a named place. You see a lot of application of Incoterms. It's quite common to not have a named place, and that is a potential gotcha. Always 3 letters followed by a named place. So looking back on the history of Incoterms, you can see that we're in a pattern where the terms have been updated every 10 years going back to 1980. We suspect that will continue. Why do we use Incoterms? First of all, and most importantly, we want to take the cost and multiple costs, the risks and the responsibilities between a seller and a buyer in an international transaction, and we want to divide that very, very specifically. What this does when performed successfully is this reduces the potential for a misunderstanding or confusion between a buyer and a seller in an international transaction. On top of that, the cost of logistics also impacts the landed cost of products that are being bought and sold. So we need to make sure that we're allowing for the proper allocation of costs into the price of the product. And as I mentioned just a second ago, knowing Incoterms and knowing how to properly use them is a major strategic advantage in the world of international trade. So looking at the objectives specifically for Incoterms 2020. There are three themes that you see when you look at the changes. The first is the responsibilities have been reordered. For the first time, I think, in about 20 or 30 years, I believe, what we've done is we've changed the order of risk and delivery to provide a little more clarity and make it a little more easy to understand. What we've also done is add clarity to the demarcation points of these responsibilities and specifically how those are applied to contracts of sale. And we want to really emphasize helping the parties understand what they're committing to and make the right choice. The goal here obviously is a positive transaction. Most of our clients are recurring clients. They pride themselves on repeat business with their clients. And so we want to make sure that everybody understands what's going to happen and no one's surprised and everyone's happy at the end of the day. So let's look at the changes in Incoterms 2020. We've highlighted 6 of what we feel like are the most important changes to go over with you today. So we'll jump right in. First of all, DAT, delivered at terminal. This term the name has been changed to DPU, delivered at place unloaded. Really, that is the only difference in the change to this term. Terminal becomes place, and what drove this is that there were people that were wanting to take delivery at a named place that wasn't specifically a terminal. So this isn't really that big of a change, just a name change. Looking deeper, FCA, free carrier. So there's been some clarification added to the language around sharing information, specifically sharing the bills of lading. Parties are agreeing now for the buyer to direct the carrier that they control to provide a bill of lading back to the seller. This is very, very important for a number of things. Proof of sale in some cases, certainly export compliance and filing, letters of credit. So there's many reasons why a seller is going to want to have a copy of the bill of lading even though they don't control the transportation due to the nature of the FCA term. So essentially what you see here is some language around cooperation, encouraging cooperation. The next change that we see in 2020 involves a change to the language around the insurance coverage requirements for CIF and CIP. Now we know the I in these terms stands for insurance. So what you're seeing here is some language indicating that CIP will move from Clause C of the Institute of Cargo Clauses, which is kind of a limited risk implied coverage, to Clause A, which is more what you would think of as an all risk implied coverage, subject to, of course, some exclusions. So why is this? Why did this happen? Well, as this term has evolved, we have seen that CIF, which is an ocean-only term, typically lends itself to bulk cargo. So here you're talking about, think about steel, grain, fuel, things like that. Where CIP, being a multimodal term, mostly seen with both ocean freight and air freight, lends itself to more manufactured, high-value goods. So you're seeing language introduced into the terms that implies that CIP is going to be insured at a higher value than CIF. Next, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the list of responsibilities, which has been around for a long time, has been reordered, simplified, and some feel improved. So what you see when you look at this list, as we will in a moment, is it's more sequential in the order of things of an international transaction. It's more of a one-stop checklist for the costs under each term, and the documentation that supports Incoterms has been revised to make sure that the costs are understood, and accounted for. So the next point is some more cooperation language around security requirements. So this is most notably related to security filings export compliance, import compliance, and so forth. Probably the best example of that would be a importer security filing, an ISF form. So the reason this language has been revised is that, well, number one, we know that terms and the world we live in has changed significantly in the last 20 years. These security filings are a lot bigger part of our world. And most importantly, if they're not done or they're not done correctly or they're not done in a timely fashion, then you're adding cost and risk, and both of those things, cost, risk, and delay, to the transaction. So just like the bill of lading concern back with FCA, what we've done here is we've added some cooperation language. Next, the terms have been revised for conditions where the seller or the buyer is using their own transportation. So new words appear about arranging transportation at its own cost, in addition to contracting for the transportation. So the terms here have simply been revised to make sure that we're not just assuming that the transportation is hired out to a third party. Lastly, if you have a copy of the Incoterms guide, you'll see that the guidance notes are now explanatory notes, and they have been gone through fairly significantly with the express intent of making them simpler to use, easier to use, and what I have found and what our clients have found is easier to reference when you get put on the spot with a quick question about a term or one of the responsibilities in a term. Quite a bit easier to find this information and access it quickly. So that's really it. A lot of people, myself included, feel like these changes were promised to be quite sweeping, and I can tell you that myself and a number of other people that I work with in the industry find the changes to be relatively underwhelming. But I guess that's okay. I suppose that indicates that the setup of the last iteration of Incoterms was fairly effective. So let's talk about them real quick. As you see on the left-hand side of your screen, we've got the 7 any transportation mode terms listed in order of use. So your traditional collect terms for an exporter come at the top, and your prepaid terms with increasing amounts of responsibility come along as you get to the bottom of the list. Over to the right is the export-related collect terms. These are ocean only, and I've got them matched up with their matching any mode term. This is a situation where technically there's no reason to use one of these terms. You're certainly welcome to, but the terms on the left apply to any mode of transportation. Here's a quick look at the old seller versus buyer responsibility areas. So if you think about 11 different terms, 10 areas of responsibility, it's quite possible to enter one of these conversations and discuss 110 points of data. That is not fun, and we will not do that today. The purpose of this slide is to illustrate the new seller and buyer responsibility areas in Incoterms 2020. What we've done here is we've designated the seller as A, party A, the buyer is party B, and you can see that the order of these terms now is a lot closer to the natural flow of an international transaction. So let's talk about a couple quick tips since we've got you here and you've taken your time to look into international trading terms a little more. Tip number 1, you hear this from a lot of people and you'll hear it again from me. Try to avoid the bookends. Try to avoid ex-works. Try to avoid DDP. It's not that there aren't good reasons to use those terms. There are, especially in DDP. But some of the most notable developers and subject matter experts of Incoterms will tell you, try not to use those terms if you can avoid it. In both cases, whether you are an importer or an exporter, these terms are almost more than likely getting you into areas of responsibility that you might not necessarily want to take on. The second tip, So if we avoid the bookends, let's look at the remaining 5 any mode terms. Try to standardize on one E or F term for collect business. This is if you are an exporter. And try to standardize on one C or D term for prepaid business. Again, I apologize if this presentation is a little export oriented. If you're an importer, same rules apply, just reverse the message and it works the same way. In this case, we make a case for the F term to be FCA. That's a very good term with very clear delineation of who is responsible for what, including loading of the freight. And on the collect side, CIP is a fantastic term. Do be careful if you're using this term to make sure that your insurance coverage meets the requirements of CIP. I've heard this so many times in training sessions from Incoterms experts. C stands for control. When you're using a C term, you control the transaction. All the parties to the transaction report to you. It's really a good choice. Couple good resources before we sign off. Talk to one of us on our team about our handy Incoterms chart. We've matched up the buyer responsibilities and the seller responsibilities in a nice, easy to reference chart. This looks great on the side of your workspace, nice and bright. The other thing to look into is the ICC books are also very, very handy. I personally don't leave home without my Incoterms 2020 handbook, and that is the one that I referenced a few minutes ago that is pretty handy and pretty quick to use and very well done. The other one, which is more thorough, is Frank Reynolds' book, Incoterms for Americans. This is a little more significant rendering of the different terms and the best applications of the different terms. These books are available at the ICC Publications website. They are a little pricey. I think $50-$60 a piece, but very, very handy. This is the conclusion of our presentation on a quick look at Incoterms 2020. Keep an eye out for a more thorough presentation of Incoterms that focuses on the terms as a holistic group and not just the changes. I want to thank you for your time and attention. We always appreciate the opportunity to work with someone who is looking to expand their knowledge and skills in international trade. We know that results in great business. If you're a client, a partner, or a friend of ours, I want to thank you especially for your attention. We appreciate you greatly. Couldn't do it without you. If you are not a partner, client, or friend, you should be one. And I hope you'll reach out to one of us, and we would love to meet you and hear your story and find out how we can help drive your success in international trade. Again, Jay Devers, Best Way International. I want to thank you for allowing us to be a part of your team, and good luck with your international transactions.